Hello guys, so here we are with the next session of our impact series. So in this lecture we'll be continuing with the essay and we'll dive deeper into some of the different kinds of essays which we might have not done so far. So we have covered the simple topics, the tough topics, especially with respect to the philosophical topics or the philosophical quotations, the sayings, proverbs, etc. All that we have covered. In this session, we will be taking some other kinds of topics. The very first is from the miscellaneous theme. We have seen that there are around 19 themes of the essay. One theme is miscellaneous, wherein it consists of few topics which have never been asked previously. For example, one such topic is related to sports. So only once it has been asked in the last around 25-30 years. So that kind of topic is there. So the very first topic we will take is that on sports, which talks about Olympics. We'll see that. Apart from that, so far we have seen that the topics generally we are addressing both the sides of the coin, and majority of the time we are sort of in favor of the argument and very small amount we are saying against. So we'll see, can there be any such topic which makes us do otherwise? We'll see that as well. So let's get started with the very first topic of this session. The topic is 50 golds in Olympics. Can this be a reality for India? Now, the very important thing about this is no matter how unrealistic it seems. See, first of all, there is no time limit that is mentioned over here. However, they could have mentioned the time limit of, let's say, 2050. In the future, in the coming days, it can so happen that they mention the time limit as in up to by when are we expecting it to achieve, but by when are we expecting India to achieve this particular feat, achieve this particular number of tally of medals. So we are not just talking about the total medals but the gold medals. So that's one thing. Here they are not even mentioning that. So why I am emphasizing on these things is that basically if this is not mentioned, that means it's an open-ended question, and it's more achievable than if you put a timeline. So if you put a timeline of 2050, for example, it becomes even more difficult. But if it becomes even more difficult, do you think your answer may change or remain the same? It would more or less remain the same. Why? Because putting a timeline does make it difficult, but still we have to be aspirational, we have to be hopeful, and we have to be positive. The only thing that may change slightly is probably the kind of solutions that you are mentioning. So it should not be too long term that it goes way beyond 2050, or if they have given a year, let's say 2040, and we are already in 2025, just for 15 years left. So the types of solutions that you are mentioning, the pace of solution that you want to implement, the amount of expenditure, etc., that you will do will fasten up if this timeline is closer, because it will make it even more difficult to achieve, as a result of which we have to mention different kinds of probably solutions or the way forward. Apart from it, more or less it will remain the same. Another point I wanted to mention over here is, if there is a timeline, it makes it more difficult, but still we should be hopeful. I hope that is clear. So let's get started with this. 50 golds in Olympics, can this be a reality? So what are we going to do? Are we going to agree with the statement or disagree? Of course, we are going to agree. Agree in the sense we are going to be hopeful that yes, India can achieve. Right, but that is going to be the main part of the body. So how do we start this? The introduction, of course, can be with respect to, here you can talk about the current affairs situation, you can talk about the present situation of India with respect to Olympics, with respect to the number of medals that we have won in the past, or what has been the performance in the recent. You can talk about that so that you can set the tone as to how far India is from achieving this goal. So you can begin with a powerful statistics is what I'm talking about, or an anecdote. Now, a very powerful statistics can be with respect to how many people we are over here, and at the same time, so less number of medals we are winning. If we compare this to USA, it's a completely different ball game altogether. If we compare to China, China also has comparable population with respect to India, but very high amount of gold medals, very high amount of medals. USA, which has around 1/5 of India's population, 1/4 of India's population, is having way too many gold medals and total medals at large. So the population is so high, but still only a handful of medals has been won. The number of medals will be higher, but if you're talking about gold, gold is even less, right? As a result of which 50 medals vision is a difficult thing to achieve. So basically what you're doing is, it's a vision that ignites hope and determination. Though difficult, but you can still have hope of achieving that particular thing. And because of that, what you are doing is, you are setting the tone for the essay, that boss, what we are striving it for this, where we are presently is probably at a very low level. So all that is what we are talking about in the beginning. Once we do that, then we can go ahead to raise certain questions. So this particular essay can be based on questioning nature, wherein you start raising certain questions, let's say 10-15 questions you raise, and you can answer those questions throughout the main body. One approach can be that, or the other approach can be raise question, but just one major question which you can answer with different facets of your main body. So here the core question, can India realistically achieve this? Is it realistic? Now, how to measure the realistic nature or not? You can compare with respect to the performance of the last 2 decades. Has there been an increase, or has there been just fluctuation, ups and downs? If there has been an increase like this, maybe if we continue this, we may reach for 50 medals. But if there has been ups and downs, then we are not even going in the right direction. In 2020 Olympics, I think we did not even won a single gold medal, that is. So that is a big concern. That sets the tone that probably what approach we are following is not the approach, and the entire approach might need to be changed. And that is why we will be required to look outside for the approach with respect to other countries. So basically, you raise that valid question, then you provide the thesis wherein you start examining how is it possible. So how is it possible? So before doing that, you can in the main body start with India's performance historical perspective. This is what we are going to do first. What are we going to do? See the trend, how it has been. So how do we see the trend? We do not generally see the trend. We can divide the trend into different timelines. There is a reason to do that. One is the pre-independence or the early years. This is one. The second is post-independence. Now, pre-independence, not much was in our control. We were under the British rule. So, after independence, things were in our control, but at the same time, India was struggling with respect to economy, production, agriculture, everything. A lot of things we were struggling with. So things should have been better, but we did not have the wherewithal, the resources to cater to this. So it is very much possible the situation might have become worse, even though it was supposed to improve. So all that needs to be mentioned with respect to pre-independence, success in hockey, but limited achievements in other sports. So here, during the Second World War, etc., wherein it is said that Hitler wanted to watch Dhyan Chand play at that time. I think, yes, that's what the name of the hockey player. Indian hockey team was exceptional. Indian hockey team has won a lot of accolades. So that's what we are talking about, the success of hockey, but limited achievement elsewhere. Post-independence, what has been the struggle? The lack of system, lack of everything is present, because now you yourself are taking care of it. Earlier also, when Britishers are taking care of it, they are not taking care of it as such properly. And what they have ensured is our growth is stunted, private sector is not developed, government does not exist. So immediately after independence, not much is going to happen then as well. Then you can talk about the recent growth, that projects at least if there is any recent growth which is visible over here or not. If there is no recent growth also visible, then that makes this task even more difficult. I hope that is clear. If there is some recent growth, what we can say is we can continue the trend or improve on the trend. But if there is no growth, we have to first bring the growth and increase the growth in order to achieve it. Remember, there is no timeline given in the question, so that makes it a tad bit easier to ascertain that we will achieve it, or else it would have become even more critical, right? And then you talk about the recent Olympics breakthrough. The most recent Olympics, or a couple of Olympics you can talk about, wherein India did win some medal. You can name certain athletes who have won the medal. At the same time, it might not be enough as per the present rate. So as per the present rate of improvement, this might not be enough. Since this might not be enough, why there might be reasons as to why it is not enough. So basically, you mention the challenges that are there in achieving 50 Olympic goals. So you talk about the challenges. When you are talking about the challenges, does not mean you are denying that it can be achieved. When you're talking about the challenges itself, means that there is a possibility, but there are challenges. So we mention those challenges, and then we talk about how to overcome those challenges. So first, we start by mentioning the challenges in achieving 50 Olympic gold medals. So number one is lack of sports infrastructure. Very important. And if possible, try to give an anecdote in this. In sports, you can give certain anecdotes. Remember one anecdote with respect to hockey itself. See, we said that hockey was doing quite well, right? And we especially from 1928 to 56. But then what happened to hockey? Now also hockey is a part of Olympics. So why are we not winning gold medal in hockey at least? See, that is because the entire game changed. Now what do I mean by that? The game is same, but certain things change, and that the reason for us not doing well lies in the sports infrastructure. So what used to happen earlier is hockey was played on natural turf, natural grass, natural ground. So natural ground has a, people who might have played football, hockey, etc. They know the natural ground. Even others would know, theoretically that's also possible. So the natural ground has a particular kind of bounce with respect to the ball, and the ball comes with a particular speed. So you know you are playing, you are training on that, you are habitual, you go, you win, you are doing exceptionally well. But then what happened? The world changes the rule. What rule do they change? Basically, then the world starts playing, the major tournament starts happening on artificial ground, on artificial turf. Now on the artificial turf, the bounce is different, the speed of the ball is different, things are different. Now the first world, the developed world, adapts to it and ensures that their grounds have this artificial turf laid. In India, that does not happen. Lack of sports infrastructure, as a result of which our Indian players, they are practicing on the natural ground, but in the tournament going and playing on the artificial turf and having completely different bounce, different speed, different everything. And the others are practicing on the artificial turf and playing also on the artificial turf, thus creating a big void between the quality. However, India is coming up again now, but we are always playing a catch-up role since that particular time. So this anecdote can be talked about. At times, the games are so evolving that your sports infrastructure needs to keep pace with that in order for you to also do well. Another example, if I give you, is that of football. So in football, the goalkeeper needs to dive left, right, center. If your ground in India where you practice a hard surface ground where you cannot dive, so the goalkeeper does not practice those things because the ground is not lush green grass ground. If it was, they would have been able to practice even better. So these are the things which is related to infrastructure, which plays such an important role in sports. So this is what it is all about. This anecdote was the important thing which I was wanting to mention over here. Then of course, why the infrastructure is not developed? Because of course of the limited investment that is present in sport. So you talk about that. And then you have cultural and social behaviors. Now, what do you mean by cultural and social behaviors? Maybe conservative culture is there, because of which there is not much advancement in sport. There is gender disparity. If it's a female, if you are a female, you are probably not allowed to go out and play, not take part in sports, etc., etc. All those cultural and social barriers come into the picture. Because of it, what happens? The talent pool of sports itself reduces, as a result of which the success stories itself will reduce. I hope that's absolutely clear. Then next is talent identification and grassroots development. Now, talent identification becomes a difficult part. How is the talent identified? See, talents are identified through academies. But what if you are not enrolled in any academy? You might not be able to identify. We do have certain stories in which talents were identified from the streets. That's well and good. But those are the exceptions. You do not go and watch every other player in the street. So what can be the way forward? Academics. From academics you identify, from academies you identify, but everyone is not enrolled in academy. In fact, very few people are enrolled in academy. Then you identify at the, let's say, at the school level. Now in school also the enrollment is quite less. At college level it is lesser. At postgraduate, all these levels the enrollment etc is less. For females it's even lesser. In academy enrollment is less. The same case is there for specifically for female. So the identification itself becomes quite difficult, is what the issue over here is. Then once that is addressed, then you have diet and sports science deficiency. It is extremely important. Diet and sports science plays a very important role, because now there are let's say the differences just of seconds, milliseconds, microseconds, and a lot of things get decided, not just maybe physically. Let's say two runners are almost the same, but it is the kind of aerodynamically made shoes they are wearing, the kind of things they are eating, the kind of intake they are having, etc. The kind of data sciences to help them, etc., etc., is there. So to analyze your game by naked eye, but to analyze your game with the help of technology is a completely different thing altogether. So if others have those resources and you do not, you will be left behind, is what is supposed to be mentioned over here. Next is of course the bureaucratic red tape and governance issue. So lack of autonomy in sports federation, political interference in athlete selection, and training policies. So at times there can be political interference, there can be biases. A better athlete may not be selected, someone else will be selected because of certain preferences, biases. All those political meddling, political involvement, bureaucratic red tape, etc. is what we will be mentioning, right? So once we mention that, we can quickly talk about the solution itself over here. Solution itself can be talked about over here. Increasing investment in the infrastructure, ensuring the diet, this, that, all the things that you have mentioned in the challenges, the solution to all of them has to be provided. Number of solutions can be for various other issues as well, but you need to ensure that at least what all issues have been mentioned, solution to each and every one should be provided. Never make a mistake of mentioning, let's say, A, B, C, D, E, these 5 issues, and mentioning solution only for B, C, and E. Now this is a problem. Why? Because there are 2 issues you have mentioned to whom you have not provided any solution. So do not, absolutely do not do that. Now your solutions can be for more. Let's say you have provided issues for A, B, C, D, E. Your solution can be for A, B, C, D, E, and you can give some other XYZ solution for certain other things as well. It can be more in number, but it should not be less than this. You should ensure that all the issues that you have mentioned is addressed by you. Now once you address that, you should also look for it that whether this will be enough, because the possibility is this may get you something better, but whether it is enough for 50 medals or not. So where you have to look at the nations which have achieved these 50 medal tally, 50 gold medal tally. So you look at the nations like USA, like China, and see what they're doing. Can't we mirror what policies they have, or even better it? That is why talking about learning from successful nations. So you start from China's model. China's model is what? State-sponsored rigorous training from a young age. Now what happens is, in China, when children are born, many of them are put under Olympics training, sports training at the age of 2 years, 2.5 years, 3 years. Now that is very important, especially in certain athletic events. It is very much, certain Olympic events, it is very much important. For example, your running, your gymnastics, etc., because that's when the bone in the body is soft. You can stretch yourself even much, and your body develops and accounts and adapts in that manner in order to be exceptional at a very young age. But if you start late, if you start at the teenage or at the adulthood, then it becomes really very difficult for you to cope up with someone who was training at the age of infancy. So that is why this is what China's model is. And of course, centralized sports academies are there. So centralized, decentralized, that is one thing. You can look for centralized. It may have other challenges, but basically the state sponsored and rigorous training from a young age, this is very important. Then you have US approach, university based sports development, scholarships and private investment. This is very important. Scholarship plays a very important role. Why does scholarship play an important role? Because when scholarship is there, you don't have to worry much about investing in sports. You will have some money to take care of your basic needs. More and more students will be able to join if money is there in the sports. See, many people leave the sports because they have to earn bread for their family. They have to earn bread for the family now or maybe in the future. So they think, if I will keep being in sports, I don't know if I'll be successful or not. So I don't know if I can provide for my family or not. So let me leave it and go into the usual method of earning money to provide for my family. So all those issues will be addressed with the help of this. Then UK's transformation. So post 1996 Atlanta Olympics, UK basically invested heavily in elite sports and it has given its certain results. So we can take that example as well. So what are the lessons for India from this? Increased state and private investment, training programs, infrastructure development, all those things are our lessons. Now once that is done, then you can set the roadmap to 50 Olympic gold medals. So what have we seen? The challenges that are there, how to address those challenges, what can be the best practices we can take from other countries, what learning we can take from them. And now we are developing a roadmap of revamping sports governance, massive investment, both state as well as private, grassroots development and talent scouting. You can mention about schemes like Hello India, etc., which takes into account developing people from each and every individual schools. Then integration of sports with education, sports science and athlete welfare, corporate and private sector involvement. Now encourage CSR investment. CSR is corporate social responsibility. Any company, corporate, which is making a certain amount of profit is obliged to spend certain amount of its profits into CSR activity. So CSR activities in sports can be encouraged. Then of course you have to come up with long-term vision and policy. It need not be able, of course it will not be done in a short-term way. Long-term measure is what you have to see. And then finally, before ending, there can be a perspective of counter arguments and challenges. Counter arguments and challenges means we can do all that, but there are financial strains. Will we be able to do it? Is it the right way forward? Should we be spending so much on sports? There are other important things to spend on. All those things and time frame for achieving this is a long-term process requiring patience and sustained effort, right? So is it possible for us to sustain such high investment for such a long time? Is it even required? Should we even do, or are there better and more important things to focus on? Let's say hunger, poverty, this, that. You can raise those questions and try to address those questions along with providing solutions to overcome these challenges. So you provide this, and then finally we will conclude. So how do we conclude? Of course we will be concluding on a positive note, on a positive, goal-oriented and aspirational manner is what we will be achieving. So we can talk about India achieving this 50 gold medal wish or dream or goal. Not just that, but becoming the topmost country of Olympics. So you can end it like that. So when you are ending, I am asking you to not limit yourself to 50 gold, but you also talk about being the best or the top country when it comes to Olympics. I hope that's absolutely clear. So this is how you can talk about this essay. Now one more thing is, when you write essay, see, we have always talked about writing quotations in the beginning, but it does not harm if you can write certain quotations at the end also, that quotation, but make sure the quotation in the end with which you are ending the essay is not a negative one but a positive one. So you can end the essay with a quote. I hope that's absolutely clear. All right, so this was about the miscellaneous essay on sport. Now next is Why should we be proud of being Indians? So now we will do this essay together. We'll make the framework of this essay together. Why should we be proud of being Indians? Question mark. Now, again, in this question, what happens is, what do? Do you side by it? Will you be saying no? Yeah, will you be saying that yes, we should be proud and only talk about that, or will you be saying that we should not even be proud? Because see, the question is asking why should we be proud of being Indians? Now, in essay, when text is there, when you chat on messages, you don't know the tone of the person. So I can ask someone, why should you be proud of being Indian? Now it is in a manner as if I'm suggesting that you should not be proud, right? But at the same time, I can be, tell me, or even if I don't say tell me, I can be, why should you be proud of being Indian? Now in this manner, my tone is such that it emphasizes that you tell me the reasons as to why. In the first instance, it was as if you should not be. Why should you? Right? So what do you interpret with respect to this? Here the tonality is not there, but since the tonality is not there, of course it is open for interpretation, but you should interpret it in the manner that yes, you should be proud of being Indian. And here what is being asked is not a rhetorical question which has no as an answer, but a question which demands reasoning from you as to why you should be proud. So majorly what we will be doing is we will be focusing on the question as to why we are proud, or not just why we are proud, but rather the better way would be why we should be proud. Now the second aspect of this can be, now we have not yet started the framework, we are just discussing. The second aspect of this can be that maybe we should not be proud. Maybe there are so many things which makes us feel less proud or not proud, or maybe ashamed. Maybe that is the thing. So we should reconsider being proud. That can be disagreeing with the statement, or there is a better way to disagree with the statement. This way to disagree with the statement is very negative. There is a positive way to disagree with the statement. What is a positive way to disagree with the statement? The positive way to disagree is that we can be even more proud if some of the things which are hindering our pride is eradicated. You mention that, you mention what are those things, then you mention the solution to eradicate those things, and then you talk about how you can be more proud, and then you conclude your essay. So what have we done? We have thrown out the negativity from the essay completely. I hope that is absolutely clear, right? So let's see how the framework would look like. Now, we should take a lot of pride in our country. We have done exceptionally well. A Western world might have thought us otherwise, given us the inferiority complex, but trust me, we have done exceptionally well. So it is not that even that we are lying or we should not say, we are still saying it is the logically right thing as well. So we can start by mention a quote, fair enough, but still introduction has to be written. So what can be written in the introduction? In the introduction, you can talk about, as to what things should make a citizen of a particular country feel proud, right? Or you can talk about the conflict that exists in India with respect to certain things of which we feel so proud, but with respect to certain things we don't take much pride in. For example, we have managed to hold on to democracy that is there, right? However, there is this untouchability which is still practiced, right? There is secularism in the country, but at the same time there is intolerance which still exists, right? There is growth in GDP, etc., which is happening. However, there is still inequality that exists. So what are we doing? We are giving a dichotomy of this and that, certain things which make us feel proud and certain things which do not, right? So all those things are mentioned as well over here. You can mention that democracy, yes, but untouchability as well. Secularism, yes, but intolerance as well. Growth, yes, but inequality as well. Gandhian non-violence as well, but people taking law into their own hand by violent means as well. So when you say this, basically what you are doing is you are raising a question whether should we be proud or should we not. We are confused over here, and based on that you are basically setting the tone of the essay. Now once the tone of the essay is set, so this is how your introduction can look like, giving the dichotomy of existence of certain things, which part of which makes you feel proud, part of which questions you that should you even be proud of it or not. So in the introduction we mentioned the dichotomy. Two separate sides of the same coin is what we are going to mention over here. I hope that is clear, right? Now once we mention the dichotomy, it is up to you to start on either side. You can start on the negative side as well as the positive side of it. So it is better to start from the positive side, focus on that, and majority of your answers should be based on that positive tone. So you start with when dichotomy has been mentioned, then in the main body you talk about, the question is why should we be proud? Reasons for being proud. Don't write a heading like this. I'm just telling you the main discussion would be around the reasons for being proud. Now when you talk about the reasons for being proud, do not restrict yourself with respect to things only after independence. Please do not do that. You can go as well back to history as possible. You can of course go back into ancient history as well. In fact, you should go back into ancient history. See why? Because presently we may think in the last 75 years what great things India have achieved. There are a lot of great things, but then we will see a lot of Westerners, Western world, Western philosophy, Western thing, Western development. These countries are more developed, this, that, all those things we will see, and we will see we are not much developed. But what about India hundreds of years back, or in fact thousands of years back, when we have people who have done exceptionally well, people who have given certain philosophies, certain thoughts, which the Western world has stolen and reproduced in their own names. So mention, you can start right from there. Okay, so you can talk about India basically given the historical perspective. Historical perspective. Now in historical perspective, you have ancient history, you have medieval history, you have modern history, you have post-independent India, you have present India. You can mention all these things as possible. In modern history, do not forget to specifically emphasize on the Indian national movement, which makes you proud. Yes, that is something that we have done. Were we the one who were ruling others? Were we the one who colonized Britishers or the rest of the world, or have the goal of colonizing the entire world? See, that was not the the inherent basic or primary focus of India, right? So you talk about that. Rather, we were subjugated to the colonialism, which we fought and won independence. And of course the concept of India came later after the 1900s, in the beginning of the 1900s. That's when the concept came, and then we fought for independence, became independent. That itself makes us feel so much proud about it. So you talk about this, mention the great things, mention about. So here still we are not coming to development, GDP, this, that, sports, etc. No, not all those things. These are trivial things. We are focusing even on bigger things, talking about the freedom, talking about the perspective, talking about the discoveries, the things to which we have provided to the humankind. You mention all that. Not just that, you mention about unity in diversity. You mention about the the morality, the culture, the vast nature of our culture, the diverse nature of culture, people, etc. You talk about that. Unity in diversity, even with the presence of so many religion, how we are still united. You mention all those things. Once you mention all those things, you can also take examples of other country to showcase. In fact, that should be required, taking example of other country to showcase how India has done considerably well. Take example of some other country wherein multiple religion or multiple race, not necessarily religion, multiple race are there and they are fighting amongst each other. But in India, though those sporadic cases here and there are there, but majorly we are united. You give examples to showcase that particular thing. Now till here, when you have showcased that, that's when you can basically go to certain other things as well, which makes you proud, which is sort of materialistic thing or things which are tangible or things which are trivial, not this heavy. So what are those things? The things can be related to economy, the things can be related to science and technology, the things can be related to sports, the things can be related to women empowerment, the things can be related to democracy, and all can be mentioned here itself. So you mention all those things as well, which shows as to why should we be proud of being Indians. I hope that's clear. Now, when you disagree, we don't directly disagree, however, we should not be proud because of this reason. No, what we would rather say is, however, our pride can become multifold or double or, increase exponentially if we also ensure that we address certain things which makes us feel less proud or which puts a dent in the pride every Indian has. You give sentences like these, and when you talk about these dents, then you can start mentioning about the untouchability that is still there, right? You can talk about the intolerance that is still there. You can talk about the corruption that is still there. But make sure when you're talking about these things, do not act as if you are very out of it, others are doing it, you are not responsible, to hell with everyone else, others are wrong, I am right, my religion, my race, my gender, my caste. Do not be biased even in giving your examples. Of course, when you are giving examples, etc., you should not name and shame a particular section of the society, caste, religion, race, gender, etc. But even if you're giving indirectly without naming them, when you're giving examples, the examples can be quite clear. So make sure that your examples are of varied nature. At the same time, make sure that you are taking responsibility. By that, what do I mean to say that? For example, if you are mentioning corruption, please do not only focus on the politicians. There are few reasons for that. Reason number one, these politicians, from where are they coming? From outside the country, from somewhere different? No, they are coming from us, from the society only. They are us only, right, who have gone on to that level. So that is one thing we should understand. The second thing is, corruption need not necessarily mean that you are doing corruption at a high level. It is not. It is simply that whatever level of corruption you are capable of, you are doing that. If you are capable of corruption of 100 rupees, you did it. That is also corruption. If you are capable of doing corruption of 1000 crore rupees, you did that as well. So do you mean to say, no, I did it of only 100 rupees, so that is way better than, then everyone will have their own levels and this corruption will not go out. So make sure you just don't mention one single unidimensional method or way or kind of corruption or a person responsible for corruption. Rather take responsibility of that as an entire society and mention these kind of points as well, which are very, very important. Now, once you mention these kind of points, right, you will mention various other points as well. That's when you talk about how to overcome these points. How to overcome these points. So you then discuss overcoming these points, short-term measures, long-term measures. In short term, based on individual level, societal level, state level, national level, world level, etc. Long-term measure, again, individual, organization, state, national, as well as international or world level. These are the kinds of things you can talk about. You can talk about improving, and so that we may feel even more proud. Now, once you mention how to overcome that, this overcoming itself will have certain challenges. So talk about what challenges you may face when you try to overcome this, and you can mention certain present day challenge which is present, which might not have been present previously. The presence of internet. So what happens is, it when certain intolerance propagates, it propagates even faster, so making it even more difficult to address it. All those and many more challenges you can mention. Then you talk about challenges, solution to those challenges, and then finally you can talk about conclusion. right? I hope this is clear. This is how you will approach this question. Why should we be proud of being Indians? So the major focus has to be what? Because why we should be proud, majorly they are asking you the reasons, so reason has to be the main focus. So I would repeat, the main focus should be this: reasons for being proud. Right, so around 75 to 100 marks, introduction 75 to 100 marks, conclusion around 900 to 1000 words are remaining. Out of that, around 600 words should be completely this. The remaining 300 words can be divided into 150 words for this and 150 words for this, and then you conclude your essay. I hope that is clear. This is how you approach this particular topic. Now moving on to next, the statement is, or the essay topic is, fulfillment of new women in India is a myth. Now the statement is a negative statement in the sense that it is saying it's a myth. Basically it is saying it's not going to happen. I told you that we'll be discussing an essay which is different. Why is it different? Till now a lot of essays that we have discussed were in a manner wherein the statement was positive, so majorly we were agreeing to the statement, and to a small extent we were disagreeing. Now the statement is negative. Fulfillment of new women in India is a myth, is what it is saying. So it's a negative statement. Now what do we do? Now should we talk positive more? When we say positive more means, when we talk about positive more over here, is it meaning disagreeing with the statement. Means what? Fulfillment of new women in India is a myth. If we say no, it's not a myth, it's a reality. So we are disagreeing because we are saying it is a reality. So if we are saying it is a reality, we have to disagree. But in previous essays, what was happening, when we were disagreeing, we were saying certain things negative. But here disagreement means saying things which are positive. So you will be rather saying positive and inclining more towards that it is not a myth, it is happening. Second, if you when you will be writing the negative part more, that means you are agreeing to the statement more and you are saying it is a myth, right? So what do you do over here? Do you disagree and say it's not a myth, or do you agree and say it is a myth? And now see, the thing is, you have to do both, but what will you do more? Right, what will you do more? Will you do this more or this more? Now here comes a decision to be made. So understand, in this case you can do either. It will hardly make much of a difference, but remember, whatever you're doing is justify it properly. Especially when you go against the statement, justification becomes ever more important. If you want a very easy way out as a decision as to what to do, simply agree to the statement. Agree to the statement. But earlier when we were agreeing to the statement in a positive manner, it was 80%, 20% is disagreement. Here what we will do is agree to the statement up to 50%, 30% disagreement, and 20% disagreement, and the remaining 30%, how we can ensure that it becomes a reality, challenges in which is stopping it from becoming a reality, and then solution which can ensure that it becomes a reality. When you provide certain solutions, there might be certain challenges coming in front of you, then you talk about how those challenges could be overcome. I hope that is clear. So let us see how the framework of this essay would look like. So it is all right to majorly agree with the statement, talk majorly in the negative tone, because see, presently the situation is such. However, in the second part of the essay, be exceptionally hopeful in order to achieve the new women. One more important thing is, this new women, they have written in inverted commas. This is a phrase they are specifically referring to. So you should know what this new women means. If you do not know, that becomes an issue. However, even if you don't know, you can assume, you can not assume as in you can guess what it would mean. And that is exactly what it actually means also. What it would mean, if you don't know exactly when this term was coined, it was coined in the beginning of the 20th century. If you don't know all those details, that's also fine. You can still logically guess. What do you think the new women would mean? It would mean a woman which is not confined to the four walls, a woman whose work is not divided based on the sexual division of labor, a woman who is independent, a woman who's having paid labor, who's working, who's part of the economy, of the market, who's doing business, is doing entrepreneurship, is doing whatever she wants, whatever she likes, and based on her own freedom of choice and making decisions on her own, about her own. So it is basically, we are talking about an empowered woman, an empowered woman, right, or empowered women. So that is what we are talking about. This is what you would logically guess, and that is exactly what it means also. So this should not be a problem. At times when the words are not so common, then it can be a problem. So you should know exactly what it means. Generally, when inverted commas are there, they want you to understand what actually it means and address it, not randomly guessing. However, here even guessing would work. So fulfillment of new women in India is a myth. So these kind of essays with respect to gender equality essay can be very easily started with either the present situation, or even better, tracing the timeline, tracing the historical things with respect to gender equality, with respect to new women, so on and so forth. So introduction. Introduction can start with historical perspective. How has been the historical thing with respect to women? How it started, you can directly talk about the early Vedic period, then you have the later Vedic period, and then you go on to medieval history, then modern history, post-independence India, and presently what is the situation. So you basically trace from there to the present situation. Now, when you trace it to the present situation, you do talk about certain movements that are happening. You do mention about feminism. You do mention about the rights. You do mention about the improvement that is happening. Improvement is in education, basically literacy, education, and you can talk about health, maternal mortality rate, institutional delivery, then employment rate is going up, unemployment rate is coming down. Then you talk about certain success stories. So you basically talk about all of those things. So basically we are talking about a lot of positive thing here, because we can start with a positive thing to some extent and then completely disagree with it and saying that all this is there, but this is just superficial. In reality, that is nowhere near of actually leading to the construction, development, or establishment of new women in India. So what have we done? We have traced the historical perspective. So early Vedic period, the status was good, all that stuff, but then historically it has degraded, and presently also it is degraded. However, certain work are being done to further improve it. What these things are being done, you talk about all that, as a result of which what impact it is being seen, as a result of which we can be said to be moving towards the concept of new women in India. But does this alone mean new women in India? So what you have to do is, you have to define what new women means, and then after defining, do the analogy with respect to, for example, if I have to say define, so define the concept based on which you can say the parameters based on which you can say that yes, new women is being established in India. So what all parameters you will take, you describe that, and based on that you analyze whether India is actually on path of the fulfillment of new India, or is it just a myth. So after this introduction, after writing all this, the next part will be what? The next part will talk about define new woman. Now for this, whatever the criteria, freedom of choice, decision making, economic independence, right, liberty, freedom in general, right, labor force participation, education, health, females feticide needs to be addressed, child labor, this, that, child marriages, etc. All those things, not just that, the economic power, everything you will mention. and then relate it with what is happening with respect to freedom of choice. Do women have freedom of choice? It prima facie may look like, but that is not the case. Do they? So when you talk about freedom of choice, take freedom of choice in different domains. Freedom of choice with respect to their own life decisions. Freedom of choice with respect to deciding the spouse. Freedom of choice with respect to family planning. Freedom of choice with respect to deciding whether to work or not, whether go abroad and work or not, whether leave the city and work or not, whether work at night or not. All those decisions, what to wear, what to eat, what to do, what not to do, etc. We will be talking about this. Then economic independence. Economic independence can, however, mean ownership of certain things, but ownership alone is not enough. Give examples like that of state of Haryana, wherein a very high amount of land is owned by the women, but the actual work is done by men. Actual work as in the utilization of land is have been happening by the men, and the profits money that is coming out of it is being taken by the men, and they are deciding how to utilize that particular money. See, if I own the land, someone else does the business on that and gives me the money, not a problem. But what is happening is I, or let's say here the females are owning the land, but everything is being done by the male. Everything as in the extraction or the taking away of the profit. It's not that the female will not be working. They will be working in the field, but as landless laborers, even though the land is on their name. Why I'm saying as landless laborers? Because ultimately when the profit comes out, it goes in the pockets of the male of that family, who then decide what to do with this money that they have earned. So you can give such kind of examples over here. You talk about liberty. Yes, liberty is there. Liberty has been increased. Now, however, when you are mentioning that, mention the counter side of it as well. So liberty is there. Now women are able to say what they want to say. They are having various platforms to say it, but then since there are more platforms for them to say, now there are more platforms for them to be harassed, is what you can mention. So whatever side you are mentioning is doing well, you are giving a flip side wherein you are projecting that it is not that too well as well. In the same manner, education, health, etc., which is improving but still not up to the mark, not at par, not equal. There is no equality still which exists. So you have established the fact that you have defined the new women, and you have established that this particular thing, fulfillment of new, so this is the case presently. So do you think with this pace in this manner, if you proceed, new women will be established? Absolutely not. That means it is probably a myth till now, so far. Does it mean that it will be a myth in the coming days? Not necessarily. How we can ensure it is not a myth? That's what we will talk about now. How to make it a reality. So you can talk about certain steps that the individual can take, that the NGOs can take, that the government can take, that the entire world can take, that should be taken by women themselves, that should be taken or done with men. For example, sensitization of men by men, right? So women, men, etc., at individual level, NGO, government, world, done by women, men, etc., and various organizations. You talk about all that. So this is what you should do. But when you're doing this, you might be facing certain challenges. Now when you face certain challenges, mention about how to overcome those challenges, and then finally conclude your answer, your essay. So conclusion has to be around 75 to 100 words. So this is how you will approach this particular essay. Now we will have a quick look at the framework that we have just discussed. So of course, introduction, beginning with a thought-provoking quote, you can begin with that. You can of course define the new women. You can talk about, raise the historical perspective of the new women, right? And introduce the paradox that I talked about, that this is there, but at the same time not enough. Freedom is there, but to what extent, right? Ownership of land is there, but are they reaping the actual benefits? All those things we'll talk about. When you go to the main body, there is the evolution of new women in India. You will be giving a historical perspective with respect to ancient India. In ancient India also, you can divide it into early Vedic period, later Vedic period, and then medieval India, how these things deteriorated why it deteriorated, the reason for it to deteriorate, the colonial era, and of course the post-independence era with respect to also the present situations, right? Then this is what you basically talk about. Then you talk about the rise of the modern Indian women. Now this is the place where you will be talking about that there is some sort of autonomy, independence, liberty which the women is getting, about education, professionalism, political leadership is there, social and cultural empowerment of the women is present, right? So you do mention about it. Now though you have mentioned about it all the positives, however the question is, are we actually achieving? Probably not. It is still a myth. So then you are agreeing with the statement and saying why it is still a myth. So start saying, by despite the progress, despite this thing being done, there are still certain issues with respect to some other things, still certain backwardness, still the liberty has been given but not to full extent. The females, the women have ways to view their points and opinions, etc., but on those platforms itself they are now being harassed. So now there are more channels of harassment for women, so it can be counterproductive as well. These kind of arguments you will be giving about patriarchal mindset and social norms which are normalized. They are so normalized that you don't even know that they exist. And gender disparities in employment, etc., wage gap, you mentioned the concept of gender pay gap over here can be mentioned, right? Glass ceiling, you should know all these concepts. Glass ceiling means the female is not allowed to go above a certain level of hierarchy in the organization. That is what glass ceiling is. Political representation is so less, close to 13%. You mentioned all that. Violence against women, it is rising, it is always there. Violence does not just mean physical, it can be mental. In various ways it can be there. You can take example of cases, you can take case studies, etc. You can use NCRB data to tell. You are basically agreeing majorly with the statement and saying why it is just a myth. So all this burden of unpaid work, care work is on the women. Every, a lot of things you are throwing facts onto it, you are having data to back it up. Lack of affordable child care, maternity benefits, workplace flexibility, etc., etc. So you mention all that, right? Plus challenges in rural India, there can be a double whammy as well in rural India. So you have mentioned majorly why it is still a myth. Now that you have mentioned why it is still a myth, now we will be focusing on the counter view. Counter view of it is a myth so far, but will it remain? No. We can possibly make it a reality. So are there any signs of it being a reality? Don't, you can mention sports, don't start from sports, take some other domain, take some other important things, the democratic values, the freedom of speech, the freedom of choice, how more percentage of this is happening, more percentage of institutionalized deliveries, more percentage of women are now deciding their partners, etc., etc., and then come to sports and businesses, etc., plus armed forces, changing social attitude towards women, women's own attitude towards themselves, the confidence that they are instilling in themselves, so on and so forth. So now we are talking about how it can be a reality. So the focus needs to be on this as to how it can be a reality. So various help we have to take, long-term, short-term approaches we have to have, government initiatives that are there. So specifically now Mudra scheme is there. Now specifically for women entrepreneurs, you can start to talk about Startup India, Stand Up India scheme with emphasis on women, reservation for women in those schemes, etc. You can talk about. And what other thing needs to be done, what legal reforms, policy reforms, sensitization, unlearning and relearning. So it's not just making people learn, but making people unlearn and then relearn is very important. You mentioned this concept as well. Economic and workplace changes, etc., cultural and societal transformation, changes in certain laws relating to culture and social or ritual or religious practices are happening, which are allowing women to participate, this, that, all those things can be mentioned, but make sure don't mention too sensitive points or points which can be counterproductive or provoking or such that wherein the decisions are subjudicial in the court, etc., etc. Try avoid doing that, okay? And make sure to be very straightforward in the sense that don't be on a let's say very narrow path where you can fall anywhere. Don't take certain topics which you can avoid easily. For example, one thing that may come to mind is probably the Sabrimala temple entry judgment. So in that, now when women are being allowed of a particular age which previously were prohibited, so you can think whether to write it or not. You can simply avoid and mention various other things, which is very straightforward. However, the Supreme Court has given a judgment still. A lot of women, in fact, who are the devotees, have themselves on their own decided that we will still not go to the temple, because that's our belief, that when the scripture says not to, we should avoid it. So it is still, even after the judgment, the decision, or let's say the take on it, is quite divisive. So it can be avoided, because essay is a very high risk, high reward paper. You don't know what works, what not. So just stick to the simple things which you are sure will work. So you can do that as well. Grassroots employment, education, everything you talk about. Now once you talk about that, there might be certain challenges which you may face. In order to achieve this, so you can mention those challenges and how you solve these challenges. You mention this, and then finally you can conclude your answer. Now the conclusion, of course, has to be positive, goal oriented, and aspirational in nature. Basically aspirational in nature. Now how can you be aspirational over here? You can be aspirational by mentioning, see, in the above we have mentioned that so far it's a myth, but it can be a reality, for which you have given steps how to make it. There might be challenges which you will overcome. If you do that, how it can become a reality, you mention that, and conclude in a positive manner, wherein you are imagining India to be having in reality the formation of new women, and subsequently you conclude your essay. So this was slightly different from others. Here we were agreeing with the statement, but the statement itself was negative, but still we ended on a positive note. So remember, ending on a positive note is very important. No matter the topic, you can still end it on a positive note. This is how we approach this particular essay. So in the impact series, specifically with respect to essay, we have covered various different kinds of essays. Very simple, very difficult, philosophy based, science and tech based, social issue based, gender equality based, positive way, negative way, etc., etc. Different ways to start. I hope now you have learned a lot about it. Now is the time for you to start writing essays, get feedback from us, and subsequently improve on your marks. Thank you.